they should have to lie. But I don't think that they should ever be like pushing one thing as better than the other, or
no, I mean, it should be none of that.
It should just be neutral.
Right.
Neutral,
I mean, there was this big push to teach like 7 things like character, and honor, and discipline, and all these words of the month or whatever, and that was a really nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And there should be some focus on things like that, but you know, there's always been this: do we talk about sex with the kids at school? Do we have that sexual health class? Well, you know, there's some parents that aren't capable of having that discussion with their kids, and if them kids don't get that discussion somewhere, well, they're apt to be destroyed as humans when they get out into the real world. So it's important.
Well, and looking at it from, this is a rabbit hole I didn't know we were going to go down, but I'll be happy to go down it. Looking at it from when I worked at the solicitor's office, and you know, I was always very open with my kids because that's what I felt was right. But just seeing kids that were abused, those were kids that didn't know anything about their bodies.
Because they didn't know.
And
that's exactly right.
They are prime targets. They're prime targets because, and that's who predators choose, is children that don't know anything. And that's how they pick them. So I think that there is a certain amount of responsibility to teach, not, and I think it's a misunderstanding when having a discussion, and oftentimes it's like in the journal pages or in Facebook discussions, and on paper it gets misunderstood, and people say things like, you're a groomer, you know, it's not talking about
protect yourself from the groomers, and this is what they're looking for.
Exactly. This is what they're looking for, is kids that don't know their body parts. You teach age appropriate things, and when you talk about teaching a kindergartner, you know, you're talking about teaching things like what is appropriate. You know, people should never touch you under the parts that, you know, the bathing suit covers.
Right.
You know, you're not talking about anything grotesque that you would be saying to a child. You're not talking about physical acts, but you definitely want teachers and that type of thing, you know, daycare workers, you want them to inform a child, or a child to be informed, especially if you're not with your child all the time. You want them to be informed about what is appropriate and what's not. And a lot of parents don't have those discussions. Someone needs to.
Right. It's important.
Someone needs to.
It's important to protect our children appropriately. That's where we should leave that. It's about the protection of the children.
Yeah. And it's not, again, that's not grooming kids or teaching them, you know, that's not.
No, it's saying that Uncle Charlie shouldn't touch you there.
Or, you know, your coach, or, yeah.
Or the bus driver.
Yeah, or the bus driver, yeah.
Or that guy, the school resource officer.
Yeah, I mean.
They're all in jail already around us that did it, and shouldn't have. And we should have protected our children. And that's the stuff that we need to be fixing.
Yeah. Really. Yeah, that's stuff that needs addressing.
So what was the next topic?
DEI, outlawing of DEI, and I think where we're at with that, I don't think the Senate has voted on that, but the House was discussing outlawing DEI, or had passed it, but that they have not come to an agreement in South Carolina. I know our county doesn't seem to think that we should ever spend any funds on DEI, and they passed an ordinance or proclamation that we've never spent any money on DEI as far as I know.
You know,
but DEI encompasses disabled people.
But what is the difference in DEI and the good old boy system?
Well, I mean, DEI would...
if you take a look at what we got going on, DEI is set up to let people that might not be qualified or might not be physically or racially afforded the job.
Now, I think that's where you're wrong. I think DEI means that they are qualified, but typically the DEI forces them to look at all applicants.
Right. But if,
whereas before they would just toss everything out.
Right.
And then the good old boy system would be like,
well, Uncle Charlie says
who's your mama and them?
Right.
That's
but
I think basically what.
But that's not
people want it.
That's not a meritocracy. That's good old boy picking. Well, you know, Tudor needed a damn job, and now Tudor don't know what he's doing.
And I go fishing with Tudor's daddy.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
But they call it meritocracy, right?
Well, is it, or is it just DEI for white people?
It's DEI for white people. That's
so.
What it is.
But you have folks in jobs.
It's mama and them.
Right, but you get folks in jobs because of mama and them, and then we get people in the paper that stole money from the county because there's mama and them jugging, and they shouldn't have had that job to begin with. So
well, I don't know about that,
but you look at a lot of the jobs that people get in trouble in their occupation because they're not qualified to have that occupation. When you're dealing with the people's money, there's a certain sense of integrity you've got to have.
Well, and maybe, but then again, you've got somebody who seems to have misplaced $1.8 billion, and he hadn't seen a handcuff yet, right? He gets to act like he's insulted because people ask questions.
But if you don't think that Curtis Loftus isn't one of the good old boys,
well, that's what I'm saying. If you're a white guy, you don't get cuffed and stuffed.
Well, what about that
if you're a lady, then you're out of luck.
Or what about that Spartanburg sheriff that did all that stuff and checked himself into rehab?
Well, yeah.
And
again,
now we're not going to
white guy.
And then what about here in Oconee County? We had that sheriff's deputy who did some things with drugs, and then he's in rehab, and now where's he at?
Not working though.
Well, no, where's he at? You know,
not working.
But how'd he get in that job? If he's got a drug problem, how'd he get in that job?
He had a degree.
Okay, but he still, like, somebody didn't notice that many.
I have mixed feelings about that. I have mixed feelings about our sheriff's department, because I think that's another thing when we're talking about budgets and whatnot. I think when it comes to county workers and you talk about spending on needs and wants and whatnot, I think that those folks and
what about that $20-some thousand they was going to spend on Stetson's hats, and I ain't seen the first Stetson hat in the county.
I don't know about Stetson hats, but I think that money would have been way better spent on like mental health and breaks for officers and for folks that work like in the solicitor's office and in the courthouse and in the court systems, having to deal with like some of the horrors that they see. Because I'm serious, that when you handle cases of like rape victims and people who abuse children and stuff, that wears on your nerves, man. That wears on your mental health, and they should do a better job at giving those people breaks. And they might turn out, you know, with fewer situations like that.
Right.
I believe that. Because I think when you are just constantly fed like the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst, that can't turn out well. You know, that can't, because that just doesn't go away at the end of the day. It's not like when you work in a plant and you make something and then you just get to go home and it all turns off, you know. It's not like when you're an accountant and, you know, you go home and you just watch your favorite TV show and mow your lawn and stuff. That stuff sticks with you. So I think, yeah, much better use of money would be to give them some sort of support and better breaks and that kind of thing. that's a personal opinion. So
All right, so let's switch it up a little bit. What about Limestone University? How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I don't. I think it's interesting that USC and Clemson have money hand over fist, and poor old Limestone's just on the struggle bus, because I know a lot of folks who have graduated from Limestone done really well. You know, you'd think, you know, of all the things that South Carolina bails out, you know, maybe that would be. They just kind of waited to, you know, I don't know.
But it's a private university.
It is, but, you know.
But it's a historic institution
Right,
in South Carolina.
right.
It was an all-woman school,
Right?
and then they started allowing fellas. Maybe that's what happened.
Yeah.
But,
you would think that
but it's
be,
a Christian university, supposedly non-denominational.
you would think that it would be worth their time, because honestly, if something were to happen, say it was to close, then what have you got? You've got
Who's going to buy a campus?
yeah. Then you've got this property that's just
That's like when they close all these military installations and they put them for sale. It's like, but who wants to buy a Navy base in West Virginia?
no one.
$1.5 million. It's got like brand new houses. It's got a barracks. It's got a gym. It's got a pool. It's got all kind of stuff. But who wants to run and manage that? It'll just be like that eyesore of an old courthouse that the county's not doing anything with in Walhalla.
Yeah, sometimes.
And you know, this is my message for the mayor. You know, if they're going to take funds from you from the fire department, why don't you start fining the county for that eyesore to the tune of $1,000 a day until they get it cleaned up? And it'll take them, you know, a long time, and you get your money back. But that's a health hazard. It's awful.
It is. It has trees growing out of it. There's black mold. There's all kinds of stuff.
You know, it make the county pay for their mistakes and they're causing the city trouble.
Yeah.
Annexation's not the answer. Getting your money from the county is the answer.
I want an Aldi.
But make sure that the county's not leaving you holding the bag with that eyesore. I mean, think about what you could do. You know, a parking lot for the courthouse, that might be great. But I mean, there could be another business there.
They're good. A big one. That's a that's pretty good size.
And, you know, and it could have a drive-through. You know, a Dunkin' Donuts could change.
We cannot. No.
Krispy Kreme.
No Krispy Kremes on the main street.
But I'm just saying. I mean, it could be something nice and viable. That piece of property.
That was a low blow. The Krispy Kreme.
Well, I'm just saying, you like the
He knows
blueberry
I like
donuts.
the Krispy Kreme.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I like them too. but there's, you know, I know we got the mayor's interview coming up on Saturday about annexation. And, you know, maybe it's not.
I think there's a lot of misconception about what's going to happen. I think people are afraid of losing property or, you know, it being really expensive for them. So I'm hoping that he's going to clear things up with this.
Well, I think that having some fresh perspective on the council, I mean, wow, it's two more ladies on the council.
Mm-hmm.
And business owners,
Yes.
Main Street business owners,
Yes.
that, you know, making the city business oriented and getting away from taxes and water fees to run the city and allow the businesses to generate that sales tax revenue, and that's going to be amazing.
It would. Absolutely.
And the city will grow. It'll do well. And, you know, and then there's probably some city-owned properties that the city don't need to own. Get rid of them. Sell them to a business. You know, make that Broad Street area. Make that Main Street 2 with all kind of stuff. You know, like make it interesting where people turn the corner.
Well,
and there's great things.
And keep people in Walhalla, you know, that so many people have to go to Seneca to get things and to do things. It's just like I said, when you get sick, you know, what do people have to do? They have to go to Seneca. They have to go to Clemson.
Well, they do have that Clemson clinic there by the library now.
Right, but a lot of times you can't get in.
Yeah, but it's a step in the right direction.
It is. It's great if, you know, a step in the right direction. But like I was saying, evidently there's a proposed urgent care. And that's great, you know, like you got a kid with an earache or something, be able to just walk right in and say, hey, help, you know?
Well, that urgent care that they put in across from Walmart in Seneca seems to be doing wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a great opportunity for the community, and it frees up the ER.
Right.
So, you know, anything and everything can go to the urgent care, and accidents and emergencies can go to the ER.
Right.
I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And so I think that's really good.
It is.
But as far as Walhalla and annexation, that's going to be a struggle for a lot of folks, mostly folks that haven't been educated to the risks and benefits associated with the annexation. And the mayor's going to have his hands full moving forward with that education and of the people, so that when it happens, because it is going to happen.
Well, yeah,
everything
whether it's this, or, you know, whether it's 15 years from now.
Right.
I mean, you know, you can't, it's either that or board everything back up like it was, you know, 30 years ago.
And it is just the drive-through town. And then all those business owners that invested in Walhalla lose.
Yeah.
Because the city government failed. But the businesses lose, and then the people that live there lose. So
But why would we do that?
I think there's got to be a way, and I think that Tim Hall's the right guy to do it. And
You have to look at this is a long game. You know, I think a lot of people were expecting that they wanted something like in 90 days. You can't fix decades of problems in just a few months. You can't do that.
And whether that's on the local level or the national level.
Yeah, you can't do it and just...
You know, I was having that discussion last night with a friend. You know, I don't like the tariff ideas. I don't like paying more for anything. But it really takes 18, 20 months to see the fruit of any of this stuff. I'm just hoping that there is fruit in 18 or 20 months. But it remains to be seen. I'm not gonna hoot and holler and jump up and down and cheer because somebody lost their job in the federal government. I'm not gonna do that. Is there wasteful spending? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Does it need to be addressed? Yes, absolutely. Like I said in the first episode, stop sending people to Mars. Stop, looking at with testicular cancer in chameleons or whatever you're wasting money. Do the human thing and take care of humans. That's what should be important to us. And I think everything gets back to being normal.
Yeah. Stop subsidizing billionaires.
Yeah.
I still don't understand that. Why are we giving money to the wealthiest people for their pet projects? And they should be able to do it themselves.
And